Hey, this is thecanddchannel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my predictions for UFC Fight Night 55, Rockhold versus Bisping, which happens on November 8th. Overall, it's actually not too bad of a card. The main event's good. I like the co-main with Iaquinta versus Pearson. Hester versus Whittaker could be a fun striking battle. And then you got a heavyweight battle between two low to lower level heavyweights. On the prelims, you're always going to find a couple prospects here and there. Jake Matthews, I'm actually very impressed with him. His last fight, he just big brothered his opponent, Deshaun Johnson, I think. Guto Inocente, 28-year-old light heavyweight with less than 10 fights, so who trains at the Black Zillion, so that's, considering there's not a lot of 20-year-olds at light heavyweight, that's pretty good. He's going up against a guy that's pretty much a gatekeeper to the division, though, and Anthony Perosh. Sam Alvey's fighting, haven't been too impressed with him. He's fighting a guy has equal level skill in Dylan Andrews. Smolka taking the fight on short notice. He's a good prospect coming out of Hawaii. Marcus Brimage, pretty good, decent prospect, not the greatest prospect, not a blue chipper by any stretch, but decent fighter. So yeah, I actually kind of like this card. Actually, I think it's good, but not great. There's a couple lower level guys fighting on this card as well, so that it's not like the greatest card ever, but it's not that bad in my opinion. Let's get started. In the main event, we have Luke Rockhold versus Michael Bisping. Okay, Michael Bisping, 25-6 record, 15 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO. So Dan Henderson and Vitor Belfort. He's 35 years old, training out of HB Ultimate with the likes of Brandon Halsey. He's a good kickboxer with really high volume striking. Throws in combination. He has really strong cardio. He has gone 5 rounds a lot. His takedown defense is good. His counter wrestling, his ability to get back to his feet when taken down is really strong as well. And I'd actually argue his counter wrestling is probably the strongest aspect or skill that he has, to be honest with you. Luke Rockhold, 12-2 record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 7 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO. He's 29 years old on a 2-fight win streak. Training out of AKA, he is the former Strikeforce middleweight champion. He does have good kickboxing himself. He's really tall. I forgot his height. It's like past 6'4", I think. 6'4" or taller. Really strong kicker. That's the thing. His hands aren't too bad. But his kicking game is probably his biggest strength. He also has some really strong takedown defense. And good counter wrestling himself. You can see like the Zachrich fight, for example. Zachrich had a hard time taking them down and holding them down. Same with Tim Kennedy. Had a hard time taking them down and holding them down as well. Also a strong cardio. He has gone 5 rounds with the likes of Tim Kennedy and Zachrich. So this is an interesting bout. I'm favoring Rockhold. One thing about Bisping, I don't know if Rockhold is going to be able to expose it, but I notice with Bisping all the time, he's very susceptible to the overhand right. And actually, he has shown susceptibility to the outside, the rear leg high kick, which is how Vitor Belfort beat him, actually, if I'm not mistaken. For some reason, he just doesn't defend those 2 strikes that well. And Rockhold, I think he can get that high kick on Bisping, first of all. Range-wise, I'd probably go with Rockhold being able to use his kicks to keep Michael Bisping away. Hand-wise, I'd favor Bisping just being on more of the combination puncher and, like I said, high volume striking. power I'd give to Rockhold, though. Wrestling kind of cancel each other out, to be honest with you. Both guys have strong takedown defense. Rockhold has actually a really strong ground game, though. You got to see that against like Tim Bosch, for example. You know, reverse triangle Kimura on Tim Bosch in the first round, you know. But I can't really see Rockhold getting in position to do that to Michael Bisping anyways. So I think this fight's going to stay primarily on the feet. The height difference is also going to favor Rockhold. I think Bisping's actually, he's not a short middleweight though, so I mean, I don't think he's going to be that much shorter than him, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I don't think he's that much shorter than him though, so I think it's going to be a factor, maybe in the legs, because like Rockhold does have long legs and he does like to kick a lot. So I am going to go with Luke Rockhold for the win there. Next fight after that, Iaquinta fights Ross Pearson. Ross Pearson, 16-7 record with 1 no contest, 6 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO and 2 losses by sub. He's 30 years old, training out of Alliance. He's a good boxer who uses combinations well. His defense overall in the stand-up's good, and he does have solid takedown defense. Iaquinta, 9-3 record with 1 draw, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub. He has all 3 of his losses are by submission. They've all been to UFC too, if I'm not mistaken. The one to Mitch Clark was a bit egregious. He was in a dominant position. I mean, it was a really sneaky submission that Mitch Clark got though. Michael Chiesa submitted him, and then who else submitted him? I forgot. It was Chiesa, or maybe he got submitted before that. I forgot now. But he's only 27 years old, training out of Cerro Longo. Iaquinta has good boxing as well. Solid boxing. His wrestling's solid, and he has good takedown defense. He could work on his submission defense. He's not a guy that, like, once you get him to the ground, you're going to submit him or anything like that. I mean, Chiesa had to take the back, which is one of his best positions. And a lot of guys would get choked out by Chiesa if Chiesa has his back. And then Mitch Clark, like I said, really sneaky submission that he got on Iaquinta. But anyways, I don't think that's an issue, really. I don't think Ross Pearson's going to try to take the fight to the ground. So I think it's going to be a boxing fight, to be honest with you. And that's where this fight gets interesting. Ross Pearson just knocked out Gray Maynard. He's showing a lot more power in his striking as of late. He's been dropping. I think he's at least dropped or knocked out his last, like, I want to say, like 4 or 5 opponents, to be honest with you. So I like what I see out of Ross Pearson. He has a lot more power these days in his striking. Iaquinta actually fought Rodrigo Dam, and I believe he TKO'd him. You know, I've seen him. You know, he has some pop to his strikes as well. So this is where it gets interesting, because one thing about Iaquinta is he's kind of an up and comer. He's a good prospect. I think there's stuff missing in his arsenal to really call him a blue chip prospect. But he's a solid prospect that can actually, you know, definitely hasn't peaked yet. Ross Pearson, I can't help but feel he's going to stay where he is in a sense, which isn't a bad place. It's like the top 11 to 15. I don't know if he's going to be able to crack the top 10, though. This one's really hard for me to say. I'm leaning towards Ross Pearson to win this one. I think he might be just a little better defensively. He has a lot more experience. And Iaquinta does have a tendency to have mental lapses, take it easy mid-fight. He'll definitely take his proverbial foot off at the gas every once in a while in his fights. So I'm going to go with Pearson for the win. Very close fight. Two guys that are very much stylistically similar to each other. But Pearson for the win there. Next fight after that, Clint Hester fights Whittaker. Whittaker has a 12-4 record. 5 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. He's only 23 years old. He's moving up to 185. He's a good kickboxer, a particularly good counter-striker. You can actually see that in the Court McGee fight. Even though he lost, I thought he should have won. He was actually counter-striking with him. And the Colton Smith fight where he just pretty much counter-striked the whole fight. And his takedown defense is actually solid as well. Clint Hester, 11-3 record, 7 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub. I think it's a sub by strikes though. He has 2 losses by submission. He's 27 years old on a 7-fight win streak. He has good boxing with heavy hands. His grappling is the weakest part of his game, but it is improving. I mean, he did fight, after all, really high-level jiu-jitsu black belt in his last outing. Name totally escapes me, too. Oh, Antonio Braganeto. Yeah, Antonio Braganeto. And I think he got mounted, but I don't think he got finished. So, I mean, there's improvement in his grappling. It's very interesting that Robert Whittaker's moving up to 185. I never actually found him to be a huge welterweight in the sense of how welterweights normally look like now. You know, guys like Ryan LaFleur, Rory McDonald, Zach Cummings even, you know, I mean, you get these guys that are considered like big welterweights. Guys that used to fight at 185, you know, Court McGee even, you know, Maya, Damon Maya, Campman, you know, fought at 185 and cut down to 170. And they don't, and that's kind of like the norm now, you know, and Whittaker didn't seem any bigger than those guys, you know, he just seemed like what is now the norm for 170. So it's very interesting he's moving up to 185. I never thought of him as that big for the weight class. And also he's coming off a good win over Mike Rhodes, if I'm not mistaken. Showed some really good striking. I think he's training out of TriStar for that fight. So very curious move for Whittaker. I wonder what, you know, if it's going to be a good move for him or not. He did lose to Stephen Thompson as well. He got knocked out by him. So we'll see how that works. Clint Hester, he looks pretty big for 185. Like, and he's kind of like the norm for the weight class though. Tim Bosch, Yushin Okami, Munoz, Rockhold, they're all huge for the weight class, you know. And Hester is just kind of like as like big as those guys, you know. Heavy-handed guy. If this fight stays standing, I'm gonna go with Clint Hester. He has some power in his striking. It'll be interesting to see Whittaker's counter striking against Clint Hester. But I'll go with Hester for the win there. Next fight after that, Soa Palelei fights Walt Harris. Harris is taking this fight on short notice. He has a 7-3 record with all 7 wins by first round KO or TKO. He's 31 years old, 6'4", same height as Soa Palelei, training out of ATT. He is a good boxer with heavy hands. Soa Palelei, 21-4 record, 17 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by sub. Has his 2 losses by submission. 36 years old. Like I said, 6'4". I believe he also trains at ATT among some other gyms. He is a finisher, really heavy-handed. His heavy-handedness is probably most prevalent in his ground and pound, though. The way he knocked out Roland Potts, the way he knocked out Pat Barry, especially when he gets mount, he bobbleheads guys and knocks him out from mount pretty quickly. his grappling isn't too bad, but his cardio isn't very great. Due to the short notice nature of the fight, I'm gonna go with Soa Palelei. I think Walt Harris does have some heavy hands. Both are heavy-handed, actually. It's just, I think the cardio will probably go a little more towards Palelei. Stylistically, it's not a bad matchup, though, for Harris. I gotta admit now, thinking about it, Harris's stand-up, I think, is as good, if not better, than Palelei's. And it's not like Palelei is the greatest wrestler, and Walt Harris has like weak takedown defense. So I think the fight could stay standing too. It actually makes me think that the fight's gonna be closer than it appears. But I'm gonna go with Soa Palelei. I think the short notice nature of this fight is gonna negatively affect Walt Harris. Okay, on to the prelims. We have Jake Matthews versus Vagner Rocha. Vagner Rocha, 11-3 record, 1 win by TKO, 8 wins by sub, 32 years old, 4-fight win streak, and he has a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. The problem is the other parts of his game aren't that great. He's not a great striker. He's not that great of a wrestler. Jake Matthews, 7-0 undefeated record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. Super aggressive guy. And it's actually to his detriment. There's in his fight against Deshaun Johnson, shoots for a takedown and just gets uppercutted. But he keeps pushing forward. His grappling's actually pretty good. His ground and pound's really strong. Stand-up defense sucks. And also, against a guy like Rocha, he's got to watch his P's and Q's if he does want to hit the ground. Sometimes Jake Matthews will try and throw offense from his back and will lose position on top and end up on his back. Can't do that, in my opinion, against a guy like Rocha. Nonetheless, Jake Matthews for the win here. I think his aggression and his pressure fighting should be able to get the win over Vagner Rocha. Next fight after that, Guto Inocente fights Anthony Perosh. Anthony Perosh, 14-8 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 9 wins by sub. Also has 5 losses by KO or TKO. He's 42 years old, but he is a finisher, a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He is not the greatest wrestler, but he is relentless about getting takedowns. He's a good guard passer. His stand-up, he did knock out Vinny Magalash, but it's still the weakest part of his game. His chin's a bit questionable in a sense. In the stand-up, Ryan Bader actually beat up Perosh a lot on the ground. So, but, this is a guy that also got, knocked out in 7 seconds by, Ryan Jimmo, and whatnot. Guto Inocente, 6-3 record, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. He's 28 years old, training on the Black Zillions. I believe he's a Muay Thai champion, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not familiar with his ground game, though, I have to say. I know his stand-up's really good. He has really good knees. He hits hard. The thing is, he did recently lost to Derek Lewis at heavyweight. I'm not too sure what weight class this fight is at. I want to say it's at light heavyweight, but I'm not 100% sure. Nonetheless, the way I see it, it's stand-up versus grappler in a sense. I could be wrong. I've only seen Guto and Inocente's fights in Strikeforce and his one fight in the UFC against Derek Lewis where he just got bombed. So that's the thing. So I'm not too familiar with his ground game. I do know Anthony Perosh's ground game. I know his game in general. He's a guy that'll aggressively go for the takedowns, uses striking as a cover to go for takedowns, really doggedly gets takedowns, passes guard, really tries to take the back. He's really good at taking the back and tries to get the submission. I'm going to go with Anthony Perosh for this one. He's kind of the gatekeeper, though, in a sense, for Guto in a sense. You beat Anthony Perosh, you kind of like, it's pretty much you belong in the UFC type of deal. He's that gatekeeper to like the lower to mid level of the UFC. He can beat the lower level guys. When he goes up in competition, he tends to lose. It really depends, though, because the thing with the Inocente, I don't know, where he is. He's still a prospect. 6-3 record, less than 10 fights, 28 years old. Lots of room to grow there. So, he's gonna have the stand-up advantage over Anthony Perosh for sure. So that definitely plays a factor as well. Nonetheless, I'm going to go with the experience of Perosh. I think especially if he actively tries to take the fight to the ground, for me, Inocente does have 3 submission victories. So, it's still a question mark with his ground game to me. So that's why I'm going to go with Anthony Perosh for the win there. Next fight off that, Sam Alvey fights Dylan Andrews. Dylan Andrews, 17-5 record with 1 no contest. 12 wins by KO TKO, 3 wins by sub. That's 2 losses by KO TKO and 3 losses by sub. 34 years old. Solid stand-up. Average grappler. One thing about Dylan Andrews is that he's a really resilient fighter. I mean, he's not like this great fighter. He's not the prettiest fighter, but he's very resilient. He's got a lot of heart. I want to say he had a really good fight with Luke Barnett. Beat that one dude, that judo guy. His name escapes me after getting beat up by him in the first round. Makumbo or something like that. I forgot his name. Yeah, so that's the thing with Dylan Andrews. Sam Alvey, 23-6 record with 1 no contest, 14 wins by KO TKO, 2 wins by sub. Pretty similar, actually. Similar, not stat in that sense to Dylan Andrews. 28 years old, training out of Team Quest. Does have solid stand-up, a good left hook, good chin. He's a decent grappler as well. This one's hard for me to call because, man, did Sam Alvey look flat in his last fight against Tom Watson. I mean, that first round, he did nothing, Gosh, he looked pretty bad in that fight, to be perfectly honest with you. Dylan Andrews, I mean, both these guys are kind of in that same level, in my opinion. They're kind of like mid-level, middleweights. Alvey is younger, so that really helps. It's tough for me to say. This one's kind of a pick'em fight for me. I know Alvey's probably the more popular fighter. It's hard for me to shake off that loss to Watson because he didn't look good in that fight until like the second or like the third round, I think. I'm kind of going more towards Dylan Andrews. He's got a lot of heart, the X factors of heart and resilience. He's always in the fight, so I'm leaning towards Dylan Andrews for the win there. Next fight after that, Smolka fights Richie Vaculik. Smolka, 7-1 record, 2 wins by KO TKO, 4 wins by sub. Trains out of Hawaii Elite MMA with the likes of Russell Doan. He is taking the fight on short notice, but he does have some good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills and good stand-up. He did lose to Chris Carriasso in his last fight. He actually got out-grappled too. Carriasso is a good gatekeeper to the very top of the division though. Beat up Alp Oskalik though. He's a good wrestler. Defended the takedowns well. Managed to get back to his feet when he was taken down and beat him up on the feet. Richie Vaculik, 10-2 record. Oh man, I have too many stats. I forgot to write his stats down. But he's mainly a grappler, just a grappler by trade. He stand-up's just average at best. It's not that great. He's he's a solid enough wrestler. He tries to take you down and submit you. That's kind of his game. The thing is, though, even though Smolka's taking the fight on short notice, I know he's a good grappler. I think he has a better stand-up than Vaculik. I don't consider Smolka to be that, like, a lower level guy that will, like, really be susceptible to Vaculik's game. So, I'm going to go with Luis Smolka for the win there. Okay, next after that, Chris Clements fights Vic Grujic. Vic Grujic, 7-3 record, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. He trains out of Alliance. He is kind of forgettable. I think he lost to Nordin Talib. You know, I remember he was in the Ultimate Fighter one of the seasons. I think it was Nations. I don't remember too much about him, to be honest with you. To be perfectly honest with you, I remember his stand-up was okay. Like, everything was just okay. Nothing really stood out to me with him. Chris Clements, 11-5 record with 1 no contest, 10 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by decision. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO and 3 losses by sub. He's 30 years old, training out of Team Tompkins. He last fought in September 2013. I want to say that's against Stephen Thompson, actually. He's known primarily for stand-up. That's his thing. If this fight stays standing, I actually favor Clements' stand-up over Grujic's. Like I said, Grujic just didn't stand out to me at all. Chris Clements isn't anything great or anything like that, but I think he has enough in the stand-up to beat Vic Grujic. Next round of that, Daniel Kelly fights Luke Zachrich. Daniel Kelly, 7-0 undefeated record, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by sub. 36 years old, first fight in the UFC. He actually has Olympic level judo. He also fought in the Ultimate Fighter Nations, I think, and he lost pretty bad, if I'm not mistaken. In like the preliminary fight, I think. Luke Zachrich, 14-3 record, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 7 wins by sub. That's his 2 losses by submission. 33 years old. Solid stand-up, good wrestler, decent takedown defense as well. I needed to get a bead on Luke Zachrich, so I actually, because I know he got blasted by Kaya Magalesh. And then he came back and Vasconcelos. I forgot the guy's first name. And he just showed solid technical stand-up, defended the takedowns. I mean, it was a very workmanlike performance, and I liked what I saw from Zachrich. I think he can do that to Daniel Kelly. I think Zachrich speeds up Kelly on the feet, defends the takedowns. Luke Zachrich for the win there. And finally, Marcus Brimage fights Jumabieke Tuerxun. Tuerxun has a 14-2 record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by sub. 28 years old on a 2-fight losing streak. Stand-up's good, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's good as well. He actually had a pretty cool fight. I think it was against Leandro. Well, he fought Mark Diva. Diva just beat him up pretty good. And then he went against Leandro Issa, and was winning the fight until the 3rd round when Issa got the, I think it was Leandro Issa. He got the armbar in Tuerxun. That was actually a pretty cool comeback. Marcus Brimage, 6-3 record, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by decision. 29 years old, also on a 2-fight losing streak, training out of ATT. He does have good stand-up, heavy-handed, and good takedown defense as well. He lost against... I know he lost against Conor McGregor, and I think then he lost to Russell Doan, and a fight I thought he should have got the win. He did get taken down by Doan, but he was outstriking Doan pretty good. And he actually managed to defend a couple takedowns later on in the round, or in the fight against Doan. Tuerxun, I don't know if he can take down Brimage. I think Brimage has a better stand-up as well. Probably the more heavier-handed guy. Gotta go with Marcus Brimage for the win there. Okay, to recap, the main card, I have Luke Rockhold beating Michael Bisping, Ross Pearson over Al Iaquinta, Clint Hester over Robert Whittaker, and Soa Palelei beating Walt Harris. On the prelims, Jake Matthews over Vagner Rocha, Anthony Perosh beating Guto Inocente, Dylan Andrews over Sam Alvey, Luis Smolka over Richie Vaculik, Chris Clements over Vic Grujic, Luke Zachrich beating Daniel Kelly, and Marcus Brimage over Jumabieke Tuerxun. So that's it for my predictions for UFC Fight Night 55, Rockhold versus Bisping. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for You. Thank you guys very much.